It's another day in the fish room. I'm going to try to get a lot done today. I want to hook up this 75-gallon onto the auto water change system. Mostly I want to work on this 20-gallon here with my longfin white clouds. I want to clean it up, algae on the side. I know I have to clean out that sponge filter in the back, but mostly I want to have these Sterbai Corydoras in their own tank and start breeding those. And with all this extra time at home, it's it's got me scheming, thinking, what I could do more in the fish room. And believe it or not, I'm actually running out of tank space. I'm breeding a lot of fish with all this extra time, and I'm running out of tanks to put the breeding adults and raise up the fry. So, it had me thinking, if I move this fridge over where the dehumidifier is and move this tank, right here will give me 60 inches, which will let me fit another rack. So that's something I'm thinking about. And something I always do now in these day in the fish room videos is spotlight something I'm enjoying before, I get down to the work. And this is a newly scaped tank. I'm really enjoying the scape, but I'm really enjoying the fish as well. Mostly these blue neon gobies. I've never had these before. These guys are really fun to watch. I mean, they're always hanging on the glass. This guy's just going. The cirro stone, the way it's set up, they love going in between the cirro stone. I have 4 in here right now. So all these fish are in quarantine together. These are the Lame Medaka rice fish strain that I got from Dan's Fish. These are, starting to become my favorite of the Medakas. You can see the sparkle on these guys it's just, in my opinion, it looks really great. It really is like they were dipped in glitter. The camera doesn't pick it up too well, but these guys are, really pretty. So just something I'm enjoying. So let's get started on the real work. So something that I found in this tank is that although the water is clear and chemically, very clean, the fish are very healthy, because there's the aquarium co-op sand in this tank versus all my other tanks that have Eco Complete, and the Sterbai Corys stirring up the substrate all the time, the sponge in this tank just gets, it gets pretty nasty. So all my other tanks, every couple months I'll go through and occasionally wring out a sponge. But this one, I have to do it at least every month. So I'm going to show you in a second, how bad this sponge filter gets. So I'm just going to wring out this sponge and see how gross it is. And I'll have to do this with a couple more buckets. But I just wanted to show this because all this detritus and fish poop and all this stuff in here is caught in the sponge filter doesn't mean that the tank isn't healthy. So the first thing I'm doing is removing the either hair algae or string algae. Luckily, this algae is really easy to manually remove and doesn't really take over the whole tank, just some certain spots. I decided to remove the dragonstone and kind of let the Dwarf Sedge take over the front. I'm not sure how I feel about this look yet, but let me know what you guys think in the comments without the dragonstone. The story with these white clouds is that I purchased a breeding group, an adult group of 8, and I ended up breeding those and got somewhere between 200 and 250 fry. And interestingly enough, I did get some golds come out. So all the gold ones in there are actually from my longfin line. And I kept all the golds hoping that some would be longfin. And, I'm going to breed them some more and hope that they are longfin. So because the Amazon sword is such a heavy root feeder, I do put these flourish root tabs underneath it by the roots to give it those extra nutrients, especially in this tank because this is the only tank that I don't have Eco Complete in. And we could see, you know, I haven't put root tabs in a couple months, and this plant has done pretty well. It's taken up half the tank. But we can see now these lighter leaves are the new leaves coming in, and the older leaves, you know, are starting to get some holes in them. This plant, you know, it's getting nutrient deficient, so it's actually taking nutrients from these older plants to feed the new growth. And the new growth is actually a little light, so it's deficient in some nutrient, most likely nitrogen. So the root tabs will help with that. And this is a big Amazon sword, so I'm actually going to put 4 of these around. Now you probably don't have to put that many, but this is the only plant right now that's getting these flourish tabs. So you just, you know, put them around the base, and some spread out because the roots are probably all throughout here. And normally you wouldn't want the roots, you know, probably out that much if you're planting it new, but this plant, I haven't touched it in months and it's doing well like that, so I'm actually going to leave it. So I actually ended up also putting root tabs with all this Dwarf Sedge here. Just put a couple, you know, randomly. But when I first set up this tank, I didn't put any root tabs just for the Amazon sword. And Dwarf Sedge, I love Dwarf Sedge. It's an easy carpeting plant. You know, this was thrown in sand, this coarse sand, and spread out really well. But now, you know, it's been several months since the setup, and if you can notice, so the Dwarf Sedge back here is where I planted originally, and it's a nice dark green. And you can see as the chain continues, because these are all connected, they send off runners. As this continues, we get a lighter green color. And what that means is that the plant is deficient in nutrients. So that's why I supplemented now with the flourish tabs. But it does, you know, it did really well for me months and months with no supplementation. And in all my other tanks with Eco Complete, you know, it does really well. So I figured we'd get some footage of these guys before we put them in the breeder tank where we won't be able to see them as well. These are one of my favorite Corys. The pattern is really nice, and I like the pectoral fins. They kind of have some orange to them. I have bred these guys before. They did breed in a community tank and I pulled the eggs. I do have 2 that are almost full size that are in this tank that I still need to catch. A couple more adults. But let's get these guys over before they stress out some more. So I got all these guys in the tank I'm going to breed them in. One of these guys actually managed to stab me in my finger. I've never been stabbed by a Corydoras before, but I've heard that they can do it. Definitely stings. Good, you know, it took a good 15 minutes for it to stop tingling, so that was a unique experience. But I'm hoping these guys will breed in here, no substrate, just so I could feed them heavy, you know, put a lot of bloodworms and rapace to them, and it'll be a lot easier for me to clean up after them. And it'll be a little bit easier for me to spot any eggs on the glass. I do have, you know, almost the whole top of the tank covered in salvinia. So I'm hoping that these guys feel, you know, like they have cover above them. And the last thing I'm going to do today is set up this 75-gallon to the auto water change system. I plan on doing a dedicated video on how my auto water change system works, but figured I'd just briefly show you guys how it works, maybe answer some questions that way before I do the dedicated video. So this tank currently doesn't have any, you know, water coming in automatically, but this 75 does. So all this here is 1/4 inch diameter, I think it's refrigerator line, and at the end of each T we have drip emitters. And this one, you know, on the left, the brown one is a 5 gallon per hour drip emitter, and the one on the right, the green one, is a 2 gallon per hour drip emitter. On these big tanks I have, you know, 4 set up. Usually each tank gets 1, but for the 75s they get a little bit more. And the way that works I just walk over to my sprinkler system here. So really rough explanation. You know, we have water coming in, temperature controlled, and it goes through this carbon block filter. And then each rack is its own, you know, section that I can water. So what I do with this sprinkler controller here, I could manually water one now to show you. But, you know, it's set up just like a sprinkler system outside. It waters on certain days, for how long. So let's go. All the tanks that have it, the drip emitters are in the water, but the 75s I left out of the water just because it has the gap here. But we could see them, you know, running, filling. We've got, you know, you can see the 5 gallon per hour drip emitters pumping out a lot more water than the 2 gallon per hour. So let's set up the other one. So these are all the things I need. I will link the exact pieces that I use in case somebody wanted to check those out. These are the 5 gallon drip emitters, the T's that we saw. These are special cutters that cut the tubing so that it doesn't pinch the end, so that when you put the tubing in, you know, it fits nice and snug and it's not pinched. All right, so doing our test run here. You can see all of them are, you know, filling up the tank. I've got all 5 gallon drip emitters going into this one. I have big plans for this tank, complete redo, all new fish, so that's going to require a lot of water changes. So that was another day in the fish room. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and like what I'm doing, consider hitting that subscribe button to help out the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.